What you are about to see is not the beginning of a story. It is the end. In the year 1604, in the shadow of Kyoto, a master swordsman named Yagyu Munenori was about to face his final and most important duel. His opponent was not a rival samurai, but his own son. He had watched the boy train for years, had seen every flourish, every hesitation, every strength, and every weakness. As they bowed to each other, blade tips touching, the son saw a contest. The father, however, saw only the inevitable conclusion of a path that had been set in motion a decade prior. The match lasted 3 seconds. Munenori's victory was absolute, not because of superior speed, but because for him, the fight was already over. He had won it in his mind, years in advance. This is not a story about combat. It is a story about the most decisive mental weapon you can ever possess, the ability to see the end from the beginning. This is the samurai principle of Saki and mitateru. It translates not as prediction, not as hope, but as seeing ahead. It is the cornerstone of Heiho, the art of strategy, as taught by Miyamoto Musashi and every true master of warfare. It is the discipline of ending the battle in your mind before the first move is ever made. It is about perceiving the final result of your actions, your habits, and your decisions with such clarity that the path to it becomes obvious and the distractions along that path become meaningless. In our modern world, we are lost in the noise of the first step. We agonize over starting. We are paralyzed by the chaos of the middle. We are victims of the unforeseen end. But the warrior's mind operates in reverse. He starts with the end, clear and cold as a polished mirror, and lets that vision dictate every single step that must be taken. Let us follow a modern story, a parable of this principle. Meet Leo. For a decade, Leo has worked in a glass tower in a city that never sleeps. His title is senior analyst. His reality is a flood of data, urgent emails that are not urgent, and meetings that solve nothing. He is successful by the thin metrics of his world. He is also exhausted, hollow, and quietly desperate. Every Sunday evening, a deep dread settles in his chest. Every Friday brings not relief, but the numb fatigue of a retreating army. Leo's life is a series of reactions. He is not living a story he authored. He is a character reading lines written by someone else, in a play whose final act he is afraid to see. His struggle is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of vision. He cannot see an end worth walking toward, so he walks in circles. Chapter 1. The Unseen Current. Leo's problem, and perhaps yours, is that he is trapped in what the strategists called Yukio, the floating world. It is a world of immediate sensations, fleeting pressures, and reactive impulses. To see the end from the beginning requires stepping out of the current. It demands a quality of silence and observation that feels alien to us. This is Chinmaku, intentional silence. Musashi wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. Before you can see the end, you must quiet the noise that obscures it." For Leo, this began not with a grand plan, but with a single, non-negotiable action. Every morning, before checking his phone, before the coffee, he would sit for 10 minutes in a chair by his window. He did not try to meditate in the popular sense. He simply sat and watched the light change on the building across the street. His only task was to notice one single, true thing: the shape of a cloud, the slow creep of sunlight down a wall. This was not relaxation. It was reconnaissance. He was training his mind to see what was actually there, not what his anxiety told him was there. In that silence, something faint began to appear. It was not a vision of a new job or a new city. It was a feeling, a quality. He saw, or rather felt, the end he truly feared: a life of continued, respectable emptiness. A retirement party in a bland room, celebrating 40 years of answering emails. It was a bleak vision, but it was clear. And clarity, even of a painful end, is the first strategic advantage. The samurai understood that to fear a clear outcome is better than to be ambushed by a vague anxiety. Leo was no longer floating. He had touched the bottom of the river, and it was solid. He now knew, with certainty, the destination of his current path. The horror of that clear ending gave him the energy to seek a different one. The first function of seeing the end is to confront the end you are already creating. Chapter 2. Drawing the map backwards. With the true end of his current path revealed, that life of hollow achievement, Leo now faced the strategic question: if that is the unacceptable end, what is the desirable one? Here we must be ruthless. The desirable end is not a vague fantasy. I want to be happy is not a vision, it is a slogan. The warrior's end is specific, concrete, and rooted in a state of being. Leo asked a different question, one borrowed from the concept of kakugo, or resolution. If I were to die in a manner true to myself, what would I need to have lived? The answer came slowly, in fragments. It involved autonomy. It involved creating something tangible with his hands, not just manipulating spreadsheets. It involved a tangible connection to the seasons, to physical reality. He saw, as a final scene, a small workshop of his own. The smell of wood, not sanitized office air. The satisfaction of a finished object, not a submitted report. This was his new end. Now, the principle of Saki and mitateru engaged fully. Seeing the end is not magic. It is the starting point for reverse engineering. Musashi called this knowing the smallest things and the biggest things. From the vision of the workshop, Leo began to draw the map backwards. To have a workshop in 5 years, he would need skills. To gain skills, he would need to apprentice himself, to become a beginner again in his evenings and weekends. To have the capital, he would need to save with a purpose his previous spending had lacked. Every decision now had a filter. Does this action move me toward the workshop or keep me adrift toward the glass tower retirement? That dinner out, that impulsive purchase, that extra hour scrolling, seen from the true end, their cost became obvious. They were not pleasures. They were withdrawals from a future he claimed to want. He began to eliminate them, not with willpower, but with the clarity of a strategist cutting supply lines to the enemy. Chapter 3. The Discipline of the Path. A vision without daily action is a hallucination. The bridge between the end and the beginning is built with the stones of ritual, of kata. Leo's life now split into 2 parallel paths. On one path, he remained the senior analyst, but his relationship to it had changed. It was no longer his identity. It was his provisioning ground. He performed his duties with detached excellence, protecting his energy for the true path. On the other path, he enacted a new identity. He enrolled in a night course in woodworking. He filled his small apartment with books on joinery, not corporate finance. He spent Saturdays in a community workshop, his hands becoming sore and calloused. This was the embodiment of Shuhari, the stage of obedience. He was not innovating. He was faithfully following the forms, the precise cuts, the teachings of the craft. Each small, imperfect box, each wobbly joint, was a physical step on the mapped path. The end was the master craftsman. The beginning was the humble student. He had to live as the student to become the master. There were months of profound discouragement. A project would warp. A technique would elude him. The old end, the comfortable, numb office life, would whisper that this was all a foolish fantasy. This is where seeing the end becomes an anchor. When you are lost in the misery of the middle, you do not look at your clumsy hands. You return to the vision. You close your eyes and see the workshop. You smell the wood. You feel the weight of the finished piece. That vision is not a daydream. It is a strategic objective. It pulls you forward. Leo learned that discipline is not about grinding through pain. It is about aligning your daily actions so faithfully with the final vision that distraction becomes a form of self-betrayal. His small, non-negotiable actions, 2 hours of practice every night, no exceptions, were not chores. They were ceremonies honoring his future self. Chapter 4. The Victory in Advance. 5 years later, the change is not dramatic in the way movies depict it. There is no grand unveiling. There is, instead, a quiet accumulation. Leo now works 3 days a week in consultancy, a deliberate downsizing of the old life. The other 4 days are spent in a rented space full of light, sawdust, and the low hum of machinery. He is not famous. He is not rich. But he is, for the first time, whole. The Sunday dread is gone, replaced by a calm anticipation. If you were to ask him when he achieved this, he would not point to the day he leased the workshop. He would point to that morning years before, sitting in the chair, seeing the terrible end of his old path with absolute clarity. That was the moment of victory. Everything after was simply the execution of a plan already settled. The duel was won before it began. This is the power of seeing the end from the beginning. It transforms you from a passenger to a strategist. It replaces anxiety with direction. The principle asks of you a simple, profound task. Have the courage to look. To look past the immediate pressure, the floating world of distraction, and ask the strategic question, where does this path lead? Is that a place where I can die satisfied? If not, you must have the resolve to define the true end, not a vague wish, but a concrete reality so clear you can feel its texture. Once that end is fixed in your mind, like the North Star, your path is no longer a mystery. Every step is illuminated. Every distraction is exposed. Every small action gains the weight of meaning, for it is either a step toward your true end or a step away from it. You begin to live with the quiet confidence of Yagyu Munenori, bowing to the chaos of life not with fear, but with the serene knowledge that you have already seen the outcome and have already committed to the path that will lead you through it. The rain does not decide where it falls. It is carried by currents it cannot see. You have a different choice. You can see the ocean from the mountaintop and choose the rivers that will take you there. Start not with the first step, but with the last. See it, then walk. And please don't forget to hit subscribe.